I'm going to go through really quick what the project is, the background and stuff like that. And then we'll focus a little bit more on what we're doing today, what's going on right now to move this thing forward. So, and I learned yesterday what directions to point this thing. So again, Steve Mason, coordinator. I have a board that I work for. It's made up of 6 entities, which are 3 irrigation districts, Jackson County, City of Medford, and Medford Water Commission. They're my board because 2 reasons. 1, they pay me. They put funds together that pay my salary. And 2, they're the ones that have some sort of yes/no vote on the water. The water in question, the water rights, so forth like that. So they are the board that are directing this, although there's so many stakeholders, there's so many interests in the project. So, right this way. I'm pointing it the right direction this time.
You sure?
Yeah. It's on. Maybe I pointed the left up.
No, it should just do it. It worked over here, so.
I'll point this one. Point this one. It wasn't. I got it wrong yesterday, but it was just because I pointed the wrong direction. Just some simple things real quick. Improves water quality, stream flows in all the creeks, Little Butte, Bear Creek, and all the tributaries. Improves temperature is a water quality parameter, but we include it separately just because it's such a big deal for ODMW, for the fish, for them. And then it improves irrigation dramatically, in particular reliability and availability. How often you can get water and how much water you can get that you're entitled to. Currently, the districts operate, well, the users operate under a shortage. They don't get enough water in most years to the roots of their plants. Part of that has to do with the infrastructure that's in place. We're talking about, again, if I'm going too fast, if you have a question, just throw something at me and I'll stop. We're talking about 35,000 acres of irrigated land within these boundaries. This is more than 35,000. So here's Immigrant, here's Medford down here, and this is the Rogue River. Within those boundaries, there's 35,000 acres of irrigated lands irrigated by these 3 irrigation districts, known as the Rogue River Basin Project by the Bureau of Reclamation. It has 7 reservoirs, 4 Mile and Fish and Haggett are on the north side, the northern battery, Howard, Hyatt, Immigrant, and then one that you can't see, which is right somewhere right around here, which is King Creek Reservoir. It's a re-reg reservoir. It doesn't really store water. Brings water. We do bring about 30,000 acre feet, about 3/4, 80% of what Immigrant holds comes directly from the Klamath. But a lot of the water that we bring around actually starts over in Little Butte, goes to the Klamath, and then we bring it around. So within this 35,000 acres, just as an aside, there's about 5,000 acres of private water rights. People that get water out of the creeks, they have their own water rights, live flow rights. What we're looking at is basically improving the infrastructure. We need more water. We can't make it rain more. Come on in, guys. You just got to the exciting part, so you kind of perfect. So we're looking at 3 sources of water. We can conserve water. This is the big one. There's about 250 miles of canals. Canals is something you got to get a running jump to get across, if you can even do that. We have laterals, about 250 to 400 miles of those, which are small. Those are the ones that go from the canals down to each of those farm turnouts. You pass those all the time. Sometimes they look like a roadside ditch. Sometimes the roadside ditch looks like a lateral. Sometimes they're both. They're everywhere. So we got hundreds of miles. We're going to pipe all that and save about 1/3 to 40% of the water that's diverted. They divert about 135,000 acre feet a year. Immigrant holds about 37,000, 38,000. We're going to save about 1/3 of that, almost enough to fill up Immigrant every year, just in leakage. Evaporation is a small component of that we save as well.
That's what keeps the wells going?
That's what keeps shallow wells going with surface water, and wells have water rights for groundwater. However, that's a big issue. Last slide talks about that a little bit. And it's not a big issue yet because we haven't got far enough along. It is a big issue. Wells, shallow wells, and their recharge by this water is a big deal. We're looking at storage capacity. We did some evaluations of the existing reservoirs, proposed new reservoirs, and it got narrowed down to these. We could increase Emigrant, and we could increase Agate. Agate's pretty small, about 4,500, very little bit of work. We could jump that up to about 8,000 acre-feet. We got the hydrology, we got the water, we can do that. Emigrant, we got the water, and it's kind of interesting. You'd have to raise 4 dams. There's 4 dams on that reservoir, and it is our flood control reservoir in the valley. So it's the only one that they have a mandate on a certain date. They look on a chart, oh, we have more water in this, we got to release flows. Well, if you raise the dam, that curve goes up. Then on that same date, it takes more water before you have to release. That means they could, that water they're releasing in April and March for flood control, they could hold back later in the season. But it's a more expensive process. There's at least one cemetery they'd have to move again. But there's quite a bit of water could be conserved there. And then finally, treatment facilities. There's 2, Ashland Regional. Combined, it's about 14,000 acres of water during the irrigation season. You'd have to treat that, pump it, use it. It's used all the time. If you shop at Safeway, most of the lettuce you're buying, that kind of stuff, it's grown with treated water. And then, because of the way the system's set up, and we'll get into this in a little bit, it's pressurized. I'm probably going into too many details here, but basically we have access to water out of Lost Creek, and the pumping cost would be paid for by the project. So, we have 2 layouts we're looking at, basically 2 alternatives. You can ignore the colors to some extent. Basically, these are the main canals. The laterals are within inside of there. We would drop our pipes in these existing canal easements. The districts do have eminent domain. They don't want to use that. They're not going to use that. These canals follow all these contours. A pipe doesn't have to do that. A pipe can go up and down as long as the bottom's lower than the top. It's still going to get the job done. But we did a study, and if we, about 20%, if we straighten out 20% of the distance on these, we can save $70 million just in piping costs. So we will go in and, where possible, get easements to go from here to here, save a lot of money. We'll do that where we can, but getting new easements would be a time-consuming, expensive, so it's going to be a case-by-case basis.
Steve,
Yeah.
did you say eminent domain could be used?
It can be. The districts do have that ability. I don't know that they've actually ever used it, but all 3 districts do have that capacity, as does Bureau Reclamation.
What kind of pipes, what size pipes are you looking at?
So we're ranging, and so we have 2 alternatives, and I'm going to answer that as part of this. Alternative 1 is we call the low pressure version. You get your water out of Emigrant, and then you have your 3 diversions that are in Bear Creek, and you would still get water out of those 3 diversions, as well as over here on Little Beach. On that case, it's a low head pressure system. You don't have a whole lot of pressure built up. In this version, right here, we get rid of those 3 diversions, and now there's just basically pipes going down the sides, and then you drop it down. In that case, this is your biggest pipe here. You're making up for those 3 diversions. You're diverting it all out of here. That pipe there is called for a 10-foot diameter pipe. We're not going to use 10-foot pipe. We're going to do dual pipes, triple pipes. Still, it's a lot of pipe. We're probably talking 3 5-foot pipes, something like that. And we're talking the HDPE, the high-density polyethylene, the thick plastic stuff. And the reason is, we want pressure rated under this scenario. There's about 1,100 feet of elevation difference. There's a lot of pressure generated. In fact, and I can't tell you how much yet, but we're studying it right now. We're going to be able to provide the pressure to every turnout. We're looking, Randy was on the committee, as was Bill, looked at this, about 90 PSI to every turnout for every farmer. There's still too much pressure in the system. We're going to have to burn that off. And we generate hydropower in there, and that's where we can pay for some of that pumping stuff. So large pipe, all the way down to those laterals are 12 to 6-inch pipes. So up here, we could do some lining. This, for example, the Cascade Canal, we'd probably line the first half and then pipe the second half. There's just no elevation gain here. All the elevation in the Cascade Canal is in the second half, so you pipe that, you can generate some, what?
That's on a 4 mile.
Yeah, 4 mile to finish. So it's a lot of pipe. couple hundred miles of big pipe. But it does a lot. So when you see these three numbers, 1, 2, 3, it's a dry year, average year, and a wet year. This is how much water is conserved just by piping. In an average year, 31,000 acre feet. In addition to that, the model dropped in another 4,700 acre feet of water into the roots, not just to the farm, but into the roots. In addition to that, it's not shown, there's another, I think it's 10,000 acre feet left in the streams, just in an average year. You have all these other benefits. It's cheaper to operate. You have pressure, no more moss and algae, blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on. Your water, instead of getting it every 2 weeks, it's on demand. It's either daily, it's every other day, depending. And you get to use it when you need it. So suddenly we can start converting to new types of crops, more productive orchards, row crops, and such as that. The in-stream, we're talking about abandoning a lot of these live flows, transferring them to in-stream water rights for the priority dates. The streams get all this water, go back to healthier. The fish are happier, they're cleaner. We'll start marketing our in-stream recreation more. I heard a number, the Rogue River annual income from recreation on the river, so rafting, fishing, jet boats, is about $250 million a year. $250 million a year, and that's the whole Rogue River. But that's a lot of money, and this would be a marketing tool to help them with that. So here, though, are the issues. So far, it's a simple project. Everyone likes it. It's good for the farm. It's good for the environment. It's good for the economy. It doesn't have any large group that's all against it, but there are some issues. Stormwater. All the small cities in particular, but all the cities to some extent have grown up around these canals, and they use them to move stormwater. Some of them, roadside dumps right into it, house drains dump into it. If we fill those in, that becomes an issue. We probably bury the pipes under the canal, leave the canal in places where needed to manage as part of the stormwater district, and we form a stormwater district. We actually then have a district that's specifically for that. Reclaimed effluent.
And that's the responsibility of the individual community.
Of the individual community, whether it's Jackson County, for example, Jackson County. Those roadside ditches where they have to manage the water and divert it, they did a couple days driving around, they found 850 connections between their water movement and the irrigation districts. That's a lot. I mean, and it's a big deal, but it's a manageable one, and it's an engineering one. That one's relatively straightforward. Reclaimed effluent, it's a perception issue. We've literally argued about this one. I mean, not just discussed, but argued. And the water's cleaner than Bear Creek, but that doesn't matter. It's a perception issue. Do you want to use it? But it's also now a cost issue, because currently the city does have a permit. Temperature is not the issue it was as they discharge into the river. So the project would have to pay for it. And so the cost it would take to treat the water as well as pump it may make it so that it's not as cost effective now relative to, say, just getting water contracted out of Lost Creek.
Steve, how soon is it going to be before they do have to do something about it?
Depends who you talk to. Some people say the next permit cycle, it's a 5-year permit that they have to get their NPDES permit. But some people say the next permit cycle, some people say never.
Because of temperature?
Because of temperature. Right now they have a small issue, it's in October, and that's outside the irrigation, we couldn't help it anyways. But we're still evaluating the cost effectiveness of using this, how much water. And this water's cool because you can spread it. And spreading it means something special. If we conserve water, we can't take that water and put it on new acreage. So we can't go from 35,000 acres to 40,000 acres with conserved water. You have to stay your 35,000 acres. And correct me if I get any of this wrong, but reclaimed effluent, you can almost, it's not a water right to use it. You get to use it in the way you want on the acreage you want. So it has some additional benefits, but the cost effectiveness is going to be kind of challenging on that. Vernal pools, wetlands, canal side vegetation. Notice I don't call it riparian. Riparian's along a creek, it's not along a canal. Those are things that are being evaluated in the environmental impact work, the NEPA, and there are going to be impacts. Anytime you put a shovel in the ground, there's going to be some impacts. This project produces so many environmental benefits, we'll be able to get the project. That won't be a problem. Vernal pools, just as an example, if you expand agate, the surface area will expand quite a bit. It'll cover up 200 acres approximately of new land, which will have some vernal pools in it. That's a negative. By piping all those canals out there in the agate area, the agate desert, you prevent that leakage that's going into those vernal pools. That's a benefit. There's a lot of pluses and minuses, but all those get evaluated. This one here is the shortest one, it's the toughest one.
What's your definition of shallow? How deep is a shallow well?
I've seen some that are 8 feet deep. I don't know the deepest, maybe 60 feet. Is that someone?
Well, it's a hand dug.
Yeah, hand dug 12 feet.
It doesn't have a confining layer over the top.
Yeah. Basically, any well that they're going to potentially get some recharge. These are a lot of the older wells, 50s and earlier. They don't always have casings in them. You're going to get this recharge. From a water rights standpoint, you can conserve your water, keep it in your canal, use it for what the water rights says. It's going to be a public relations issue is what it's going to be. And we have some mitigation ideas. Everyone who thinks they might have an impact will get their well tested before and after, and then we go from there. We joke with Water Commission to get them to supply them with the water, but it's just a joke, so don't take that seriously.
What's your definition of claimed effluent? What does it mean from this?
We used to call it treatment level 3. There's actually standards set forth by agencies and so forth. They've switched what they label them, but it's actually a certain level of treatment that's safe for human consumption according to the Department of Human Safety. And so I don't have those, but they are mandated.
Or are you talking about water runoff from fields?
No. Those
Yeah.
are return flows. Treated effluent, reclaimed effluent, it goes to the sewage plant,
Okay.
and it comes from the sewage plant. So that's reclaimed. Return flows, which is a good question. It's not the one you were asking, but I'm going to take it anyways. Is those flows when you water and any water that comes off the farm and makes it back into a canal or a creek, those go away because we can't collect in the canals anymore, and we've taken the diversions out of most of the creeks. So the conserved water has to make up for the loss of return flows, but because it's under pressure, you're going to see Randy's staff is going to be working on this. A lot of conversion away from flood. You're going to see a reduction in return flows at the same time. So it's a big project, and it has hundreds of implications beyond what I've hit here. It's a long-term project, and it's an expensive project from a capital cost. We completed the feasibility study. This gentleman here is hogging $1 million document right here. It's got lots of information, but it's not surprising to find out that if you put a pipe in a canal, it conserves water. We learned that. We also learned how much water, where it is, when. We can show the reservoir retention and all that kind of stuff. An interest to the county would be that however much water is in a reservoir, there's a direct correlation to the recreational income. Say over at Immigrant, as that water level goes down, less people recreate there. This project keeps more water in there longer. But just lots of little connections. Anyway, we completed that. The project saves water. It does, from an engineering standpoint, what we thought. It has a cost to it. The preliminary cost includes a big contingency. It's $450 million of turnkey. So you give me $500 million, we hire consultants, contractors, they go out, they build the whole thing. In reality, that number is probably quite a bit smaller. We can do a lot of the construction ourselves, us being the irrigation districts. I don't work for them, but I'll speak for them for this moment. Probably save about $200 million there. There's going to be hydropower generation. There's probably bonding that can get done using the hydropower is backing for that. So we've initiated this, the cost-benefit analysis, which will say, oh, this is how much each of these different components cost. Here's what the economic gain is on each of these. They're going to put a value on water quality, on the fish, on the pressure to the farm, on the the new crop rotations and productions, all that kind of stuff. And they'll come out and they'll start saying what the cost benefit is for each, of the different components of the project. That'll be done, June 30th is the drop dead date for that to be done. Sorry. The FSEIS, Feasibility Study EIS, or NEPA. We're getting the funding for that. I don't want to sound too confident, but for the first time ever, it sounds very, very confident. We'll initiate that sometime before June 30th next year. That'll be done by the Bureau of Reclamation. And that's the process as probably all of you know, you have to go through for any project that has a federal nexus, and this has a few. And then you can start construction. That shouldn't say pilot, that should say something like WISE compatible. Like the term pilot project has a specific meaning, so pretend I didn't actually put that there. And so you could begin, and this is giving it 3 years. Really, it'll probably take 2 to 2.5 years to do the EIS. And then it's probably a 10-year to 15-year construction. It just takes a long time to build. Put in this big pipe. It takes about 7 to 8 guys out there, and they can do about 1 mile a month of that big pipe. So you have 8, 9 crews going. It's still going to take about 10 years, 10 to 15 years just to build that much pipe. They build the big pipe during the winter, and then during the summer they can do the small pipe.
Will there be upkeep or replacement costs before you even get it done?
This HDPE, it's 200 years. I mean, it's the life is forever. That.
Barring leaks?
Now, how I say that, though, of course, we've got some hydropower plants in there. There's going to be some scattered throughout the system wherever we have to burn off pressure. I'm sure there's going to be maintenance costs within that. But the goal is when you start building this thing, you go, I think where we get our gain, so this is a 30-mile long canal, goes from Emigrant all the way down to Larson Creek, which is basically East Barnett. It drops 3 feet the whole distance. I mean, it just barely drops at all. It may drop a little more than that. It's about a foot per 1,000 feet. So it's just so flat. So where you really gain all your pressure is when you start connecting these things. Then you're dropping 300 feet, 400 feet over a short distance. So you build those sections first, and you have some money coming in through your hydropower generation to start paying for some of that stuff. But the O&M is significantly less than the open canal. You don't have to manage for moss, you don't have to manage for rat holes and beaver dams and all that kind of stuff, dead elk, whatever. So things that are going on, we're meeting with the state natural resource agencies. They have a natural resource commission, so we're going up there second week of December because this project matches very closely with what DEQ's program is, integrated water management strategies. And so we're working with the state natural resource agencies to try and make sure that what we're proposing down here works with what they have as an idea, and then get their support, whether it's funding, staffing, whatever, to help make sure this thing goes through as smoothly as we can.
So Steve, will the irrigation times be approximately what they are now?
No. So
Be all year
basic,
round?
the season will be the same.
Okay.
The water rate won't change from that perspective. It'll still be, I think it's April 1st, October 1st, something like that.
On-demand system as opposed to rotation.
Right.
Yeah.
But during the season, yeah, so during the season, it's more or less on demand. But you still won't be irrigating today. This is outside the irrigation
Okay.
season.
One thing I hear from the farmers is, are we gonna be forced to go to sprinklers?
Nope.
Or can we still flood irrigate?
The water right says the districts will provide the water to your turnout. That turnout will be under pressure at 90 psi. If you still want to flood, you get to flood. There's a concrete box you build, a diffuser, you still flood.
Yeah, but you could conserve water if you didn't flood.
Absolutely. And I have a feeling Randy's gonna have,
You could also, it's
You're going to be
gonna,
encouraged,
Huh?
you're going to be encouraged to switch over. to
Yes.
Yeah,
cell,
but is
you're
there
not
gonna
going
be
to be
money to
forced.
help you switch it?
we can work with that, and that's what the district, our district can do, is work with them, and we have not only some of our own funding, but we have, with OWEB dollars and lots of other dollars to go in there if people need it, that's the financial help. But what we'll do is go in there and work with them, not only can they have it on demand, but what is the crop use and what's the crop uptake, and how's that gonna be used, so we can do irrigation water management scheduling on a case-by-case basis and set those up. It's just the fact that this system now allows landowners to be able to take advantage of that, and not only is it
Wastewater.
great from environmentally and return flows and decreasing water temperature, but we've shown where we've increased production by over a third on properties that have constantly flood to a pressurized system. So, you pay for part of it in the fact that you've increased your production substantially.
and no power costs. So just a couple numbers to throw out.
But there is money available to switch to
Yes,
a pipe.
and Randy's staff will help you with that.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier.
But you're not talking about that out of the project.
No, nope, not at all, not at all. So just a couple numbers to throw out that are kind of interesting. I wish Larry wasn't here because I could say this without someone correcting me. But an example is Harry and David's by themselves. They run their smudge ponds in March. On those days, they have to do frost protection. Those smudge ponds, just the fuel for Harry and David's alone is $100,000 a night. So, and they can control about 4 degrees of temperature there. If you do the overhead sprinkling and you freeze it on there, you get better control, and there's no cost because it's under pressure. So just them, $100,000 a night, you could expand that out. The reason that I say I wish Larry wasn't here is simply because there would have to be a change in the water rate. It's a different type of water rate. But the water would be available, and it's possible. But there's huge numbers we're talking about in economic savings and improvements. I mean, we're talking $1 million in March frost protection. We're talking the power use. Anybody who has to turn on a pump now wouldn't have to do that. It's just lots of little things. And hopefully,
The
you
guys that are
guys,
selling the fuel are crying because they're losing $100,000 a night.
there you go. I am putting those people out of business just like that. No, I shouldn't joke about that. But there's a lot of changes. But maybe they're making more fuel because now all the trucks driving more crops around or something. You should see a lot more crop production and a lot more productive and cost, I can't think of the right term right now, but make a lot more money off your crops. Maybe you're growing tomatoes and row crops instead of,
Decrease the cost per acre.
so,
Just growing higher value crops.
yeah.
Marijuana instead of tomatoes.
You said that.
Yeah,
Could you
Let it grow, Bill.
explain further how you're gonna fund this? You said you can do $200 million in-house,
so,
potentially. You have another
Yeah.
$250 million on top of that then.
so yesterday's meeting was interesting. So yesterday I met with Commissioner Skundrick's group, which is the Economic Development Advisory Committee. And they started to tell me how they would fund it. But the general concept is it's going to be a 2 or 3-pronged approach to the funding. One is we would do a lot of the work in kind, as much as possible. So that big number I gave you, that is paying for someone to do everything. So if we can build locally as much of the pipe as we can ourselves, that is an in-kind cost, just the condition of it. It is a federal project, so there will be federal funds put in there. So the Bureau of Reclamation owns and maintains about 60% of this infrastructure. They will be, in their budget, would be the cost to update that. And then because we're generating funds, we'd probably go through some sort of local bonding or zero low interest loans with the hydropower as backing for that. Those are the main sources of funding that we're looking at. So, and I can't go a lot further until June 30th, then we can really start getting in those numbers.
And further beyond that, do you have any policies about, say, Buy American, American labor forces doing the work? I mean, you see what happened down in San Francisco with the Bay Bridge and Chinese workers, and I mean that's sort of anathema to what
Yeah.
a lot of things.
My thought on that is it's up to those let's put it this way, I have a feeling it's gonna be very much Buy American because most of the infrastructure is managed by the Bureau of Reclamation or the irrigation districts. Irrigation district patrons are some of the most patriotic, however you want to say that, people. But it's in charge of those people that own the infrastructure. So if we're talking irrigation districts, they're in charge of that. If we're talking city facilities down here at the treatment plant, City of Medford's in charge of that. We can't tell them, but there's definitely going to be trying to get as much of the funds spent locally for local producers as possible. But we don't have any rules for that. It'll be on the
We
individual.
could have, could we not? I mean, you know,
Yeah,
for instance, South Medford's built by a firm from Utah with their employees, a few local contractors help it. You know,
Yeah.
most of our money went out of state.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, that's,
I don't see why we wouldn't. We'd love to have that. We'd like to have as much of the piping done, and if the expertise and the materials, the pipes won't be built here. We know that. They'll probably come from Canada only because that's where they're made. And I don't know you have a whole lot of choice with that. We can't use ductile steel. Don't ask for that because Bureau of Reclamation will laugh at you and say, no, they don't do that. I don't understand the reasoning, but they won't do the steel. But no, absolutely, that could be something that's put in there. And I don't think you'd have any resistance from anybody on the committee against something like that. So it's a project that hopefully you think about every now and then. And you go, wait a second, they forgot to consider this, or hey, maybe this is a good idea that we could add on to that, such as that. So it's moving forward. Right now, we're doing the cost benefit. The EIS will be starting up, and we're looking at doing a couple pilot projects at the same time. So, and this is all in conjunction with the work that the districts and reclamation just went through, the biological opinion, the consultation process they had to go through. So that's about as fast as I can talk and get as many details in there in a short time.
Is there any, does the committee have any other questions for Steve?
If not, Francis has my email, or it's smason@wiseproject.org. There's a website. Just email me. I answer my phone. The phone number's on there. It never leaves my side, unfortunately, and I actually enjoy talking about this project. I really do. And so, any thoughts, ideas, critiques?
what was the email address?
smason@wiseproject.org.
Great, thank you.
And so now, here's my request of you. What I asked yesterday from, I'm going to call them EDAC, the Economic Development Committee, is I asked one or two of them to be on a committee. I have these subcommittees. There's the Ag Committee that Randy and Bill serve on. I have an In-Stream Committee. Larry sits on that to make sure the water rights issues are considered correctly. We've got some other committees that come up as needed. And if you guys are going to sit around this table and work with the county providing advice to them and recommendations, I'd like you to consider this project as you go along. And so there may be a committee or two that you might be, if you have any interest at all in paying attention to this. We meet quarterly, and so it's not a huge interest unless something comes up and we meet more often. You don't get paid, but you'll often get donuts. So, it's not the worst thing in the world. But I'd like you, if you have any interest at all, you can start just by asking questions. But we do have some subcommittees we can obviously and always use expertise on. So, that's all I got.
This ends at the Medford Irrigation District?
No, it does all three districts. Goes all the way down, so it's Talent, Medford, and Rogue. So it goes all the way
They
down.
take in like Central Point, Gold Hill?
Yep. No, not Gold Hill.
That's
But-
one,
Central Point, but Gold Hill's its own.
yeah.
And we actually got asked, why don't,
Eagle Point, not in.
yeah, and so Eagle Point is here, but they have Little Butte Irrigation Company, Eagle Point Irrigation District. They're not part of this, of their own accord. And they said, no, we don't want to be involved. We don't want government touching our money. And then Gold Hill, we talked about them being part of it. The problem is they don't have the elevation. A lot of the benefits of this project are driven by the elevation. They cause a lot of the issues with farming in the area, but in this case, they provide a lot of benefits. So,
Okay,
that's
let's,
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
The third time's the charm, I'll get it right the first try. Then I'm gonna walk out the door, I assume.